All right, Ron, are you ready for this?
Yeah, go ahead.
You just celebrated the Centennial of Caswell Farms this year. I just want you to describe that accomplishment and how it makes you feel.
It's pretty hard to describe. It sure didn't come from a master plan of any kind. It just developed as I went along. My brother and I started out together. Well, my dad and I started out together along with my brother. So it's just everything just kind of fell into place.
The very fact that everybody got along good enough over the years to survive that long as an entity, I would say that is a big accomplishment, just going by human nature. Very proud of the fact we got here. So there's I don't know what percentage of actual farms would get there, but it's probably not very many.
It's a huge accomplishment for sure. Like, it's very, very cool, and obviously they have like such an amazing legacy and stuff here. But the day itself, it was really, really nice. I'm really glad Mark's grandpa was able to be around for it and actually like come out and enjoy the day. And we were excited for it for a really long time. Preparation of the day took quite a bit, but the execution of it and everything, it was really honestly a perfect day.
I think my in-laws thought I was crazy when I suggested celebrating it to the caliber that we did. And their thing was, do you think people would actually come? And so I guess I don't think they realize the impact that they have had over the years on the surrounding communities and people that we've done business with and our friends and family a lot, as well as I wanted to make sure that Ron and Eleanor knew how important they were and what a great farm that we have to celebrate the 100th with.
There's not a lot of, in this grand scheme of Western Canada, there's not a lot of farms left. So to make it to 100 years, that's pretty amazing to me. Leading up to it, we're like, oh, this is so much work, or we're in over our head, but it was totally worth it. It was such a nice day, and you could just tell everybody was excited to be there. So yeah, it was it's kind of hard to describe, really. When you get that kind of support out of the community and everybody's happy to be here and be at your place and appreciate an event like that and appreciate you being here. That's pretty special.
Well, I guess I just feel proud to have been a part of the last 60 years of 100, and it's great to see the younger generations wanting to farm and liking it as much as Mark and Darren do. Darren always knew he wanted to farm. When he was in, grade 2 or 3, going to Bracken to school, he told his teacher he didn't know why he had to go to school because he was going to farm anyway. So it was always in his heart to farm, and he's been very successful at it.
I don't ever remember having a memory that said it was not, that it wasn't going to be for, that anything else was going to be. I just never thought of doing anything else. Yeah, there was probably never a time where I thought that I wouldn't be doing this. I was focused from a pretty young age as to what I was going to do when I got out of school at grade 9. That's embarrassing too, I might add. You always feel like you're never going to fill the boots, right? So of the ones who come before you, because things were always harder than when I started. But you can't beat it for low stress, because the hard work's done. You just have to grow it, try to at least make it better. I mean, to have Marcus coming up from below, he's really good as far as he's very smart and he's good with math, and I always struggled with all those things. So no, it's great. It's great to have this intergenerational thing. It's like I say, it's kind of my dream actually, that's how we would carry on.
Every generation has something to contribute, and me being the youngest of the generation, grandpa who's had 60, 70 years of experience, and dad with 40, and then so working every day with them, you learn a lot through experience, which is, like I said, almost invaluable. It's just, I figure the way I learn and stuff, it's the best way, but working it with your family and doing stuff as a family and making these big decisions is very, when you sit back and look at it, it's always a really good feeling to just know that you're doing this within your own family, I guess, at the end of the day.
I think they have a pretty healthy and functional system set up between them, and it's very cool to see, and it seems very comfortable and easy flowing.
It's pretty cool to see the three of them working together, and we all have a really good relationship together. We can plan things together, and it all comes together well, and it's a good relationship. We all like each other.
It's the most wonderful feeling, actually. I've done okay on our own, and couldn't imagine having to sell off the farm to anyone else now that we've spent our lifetime building it.
Did you feel any pressure taking over the farm when you were younger?
You mean to do it? Or, well, you're always worried you're the guy that's going to lose it, right? Everybody's built it up, and then you're the guy that blows the whole thing. Yeah. You take 2 lifetimes of work and you flush her down the toilet. Yeah, no, there's pressure. Don't ever let anybody tell you there's not. And of course the pressure always is that everybody will say, wow, things are sure going downhill there since the next generation took over. Of course, you're always worried about that.
When I was a kid, and it was just enough machinery to make the place operate, and I didn't know whether there was enough equipment there to operate it, but it evolved so slowly that I didn't notice that it was evolving actually. As things developed, Darren and Marcus were certainly a big part of it. I can't claim any great stewardship that made this farm go particularly well.
Ron was very progressive, forward-thinking. It wasn't hard for the next generation to come in. They didn't have to convince him that you needed to get on with the new technology and that kind of stuff to progress.
When I when I started, 1982 was my first crop. We were summer following and growing spring wheat and durum, and that was it. I would say our farm was declining as far as its just general state of the land. And we kind of had an epiphany by the time 1990 rolled around, and as far as our cropping practices and the things we do on our farms improved every year since.
We switched from, conventional summer fallow to full continuous cropping, and Dad and Grandpa collectively making the decision to take that risk and start growing oilseeds, pulse crops in a rotation versus, 50-50 wheat and summer fallow.
I think continuous cropping is one of those things that makes the soil more productive because it holds the trash and stuff. It doesn't blow away like it does with, and of course we have had lots of places where there was drift ridges from the 30s where it drifted so bad in this country, and when you continuous crop, you always have stubble there that keeps it from blowing and running off with the spring water run and stuff, and it's just kind of part of, I guess, taking care of things.
It was a huge revolution, I guess, and a huge step in the right direction that in my time haven't really made any advancements. I don't think I'll be able to make an advancement quite like that, where you're totally changing everything you do. And I'm not saying it may not, you can never say never, but since I've been around, we've just kind of tweaked things and streamlined things more, take these 4 fields and make them into one, or make things more efficiently, take out some older buildings and put in a new one. Or I feel kind of bad sometimes because I feel like I've been set up so well, and I don't feel like I shouldn't say this, but I won't have the opportunities like my dad and my grandpa have to really, because things change so much, especially from 1950 to 1990 or 2000, with everything, with the crow rate going off, and being able to run a private rail line, and it's changing your entire practice, like I said, continuous cropping from summer following and stuff like that. And I'm not saying there won't be opportunities, but maybe not quite as direction shifting as those.
If ever the time the word sustainable can be used, yes, we weren't sustainable prior to 1990. We are now. We'll be here. People will be doing this for the foreseeable future. That the land will not degrade and blow away, or poor fertility, it just quits growing. It's getting better all the time. Yeah, we had to do it. We had to change. It was hard at the time, but got her done. And we can just seed the whole farm every year, and we make more money on it than we've ever made, and I guess it gives you biodiversity in reality. You're not just growing the same thing over and over and over. You're mixing that up in a rotation.
I guess when I'm having a conversation with somebody about this, I would never come out and say like, "Oh, I'm a steward of the land," but that's what we are. And if we don't take care of the land, it doesn't produce for us. So it's a symbiotic relationship. Like I said, it's not something we think about day to day, but it is in the back of our minds. That's what we're always striving for, is striving to be more efficient, striving to be more environmentally friendly.
They said it couldn't be done in Southwest Saskatchewan, and I like to think most people around this country, we proved them wrong, that it could be done, and people have prospered at it, I would say. Biggest philosophical, and that's really what it was philosophical almost. Once we changed that thinking, things just got better every day after that, so it was good.
Oh, first memory.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I was just little kid, born and raised here, and I didn't know there was any other part of the world actually. So this is all I know actually, is farming. So
It's been one big long memory.
it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Probably when I was 3 or 4, I just remember walking around all the time, talking to myself, pulling my wagon. That's what I did. Yeah, that was long before I went to school. And those would be, I just had a little wagon that I pulled around all the time, and that was when it was too cold to play with my Tonka toys building roads. So still doing it. Still doing it. Yep. Oh yeah, that's living the dream. Pretty much had nothing but good memories. I thought everybody lived like me, but I've had a good, I have no complaints. I wouldn't do anything different. If I could go back and start over again, I don't think there's much that I would change. There's maybe a few toys I would have bought. I had plenty of toys. I was all good there.
My earliest memory on the farm, I don't know what age. I mean, I can remember things randomly all the way back to probably when I was like 2 years old. But the earliest memory on the farm, I remember we had an older Steiger tractor, and it had a big cab in it. And I remember just looking out the window for, I think we were harrowing or something. I can't remember, or cultivating. It was a long time ago. And I remember just like leaning my head up against the window. I don't know how long I fell asleep for, but ended up falling asleep. That's the earliest tractor memory. And as far as the farm, it's, walking over to Grandma and Grandpa's and stopping at the barn to see the cats or something like that. That'd be my I would say I was probably, between 2 and 4. I remember this vividly. The first piece of equipment I was allowed to run by myself was combine. So I was 10 years old, and we were picking up lentils, we weren't picking up lentils, we were picking up wheat. We were swathed a lot back then too. And I had been riding in the combine since I was little, and riding with Dad, and he was showing, everybody showing you how to run. And my first solo was in a combine and picking up swaths when I was 10 years old. Nothing went wrong. I only went like one round, so.
Probably seven, like where I run it. Yeah, I was probably 6 or 7, running just little stuff around the yard, cultivating the trees, that kind of stuff. I remember running a swather, a pull type, when I was probably 8, where I made my first round, which if you think about it, nowadays, people lose their mind if you had 8-year-old kids running stuff that was pretty dangerous, actually. But I would have to say I was probably that 7 or 8. So.
Well, there's been so many. It's hard to pick my first one. I was pretty young. I was probably like 13. And I had when we were seeding, we had this little pup trailer attached to a tractor to deliver seed out to the seeder. And I was pulling it out to the field. It was just Wayne and I, our hired man back then. And I was pulling it out. I didn't know how to put it in 4-wheel drive. It was just a little front wheel assist tractor, and I buried this thing in the ditch, and I got out of control. And all I had to do was if I knew how to put it in 4-wheel drive, I could have just got out. But I had this thing all jackknifed in, and it's pretty scary running this thing down the road. It's a little muddy, and that's probably the earliest where I was like, "Oh, this is bad." And it really wasn't, but when in perspective with a 13-year-old, it's pretty bad. And Wayne wasn't too far away, so he walked over and just clicked it in a 4-wheel drive and just walked out. Yeah, so it's pretty dumb. I'd say that I took an interest I was pretty young. I was probably 7 or 8 years old. Before that, I was really big into like snakes and bugs. So I mean, that's pretty young still, but yeah, I remember going through high school and stuff. I was still interested in farming and stuff. Felt like this was always going to be where I ended up, even like through my whole life, basically. When I got done university and came home, and then even a little bit after that, then I really kind of was like, this is definitely where I want to be. So I guess, my whole life. And then, a few times where I kind of regret not maybe doing something else, not permanently, but doing something and then coming back to the farm. But I've always knew this is where I was going to end up. So
nothing really interesting happened my first time out. Mark was doing volleyball in Shaunavon, and I followed him here, and I remember thinking, where the fuck does he live? I'm like, where am I going? And Yeah, we came out and we just chatted with his parents. That's back when he was living in the old sugar shack, or I probably shouldn't call it that, but like the bunkhouse. I guess that was one of my earliest memories, but when I first came out here, I hardly knew what like a combine was or a seeder. Like I had family into farming, but like I said, didn't really grow up from around here or anything. So, but it was always very, very welcoming. Like Mark's grandparents were very welcoming, a little intimidating. Like I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty intimidated by his grandpa. His mom and dad, like there's nothing really not to like about them. Like I feel like we've always had a pretty good relationship right off the bat.
Well, I grew up in Shaunavon, and I actually graduated with Darren's cousin, so that's how we met. We actually met in the King's Hotel in Shaunavon. Ooh, romantic, huh? Yeah, like I grew up in Shaunavon, went away to university in Saskatoon, and it didn't envision myself farming, and then Darren and I don't know, we became really good friends first before we started dating, and then my first time out here was during harvest of 1989, and we rode in the combine together and that kind of thing. And Eleanor was just the coolest lady to meet the first time. She opened the door and she looked so young. I thought she was his sister, and I knew he didn't have a sister and stuff. So she took me out to the combine, and I rode around there all day, and they just treated me really well ever since, like from the very first day that I met them and stuff. And yeah, you know, you do funny things when you're dating and you kind of like the person or whatever. So I would come out here on weekends. In the wintertime, he would come into my house. We had dates on that swather right there. That was awful, mosquitoes and that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's all part of getting to know your partner and the life that he grew up with and that kind of stuff. Early memories are all really good out here. They eat fast. That's what I noticed. Like they ate so fast, and I would just be kind of the town kid here. And then they were up and gone again. So,
Well, I was raised on a farm in a remote area north of Instow. Well, one of my girlfriends worked here is how I first come down here, likely 1961. Then when Ron and I got together, well, then it was just kind of all fit into place. I always did like the farm work. I liked to do the jobs with my dad more than I ever did like to do the housework and stuff. So it's kind of been my passion as well. And I enjoy running machinery, you know, was better than anything that I did. So it's just been part of me.
I've been spending some time with Grandpa here in the last couple months, putting together a little bit of his perspective of the history of the farm. The original homestead was started by a man by the name of Tom Q, and that was located about 1.5 miles northwest of here. Tom Q was an American citizen and had known Ross, Grandpa Ron's dad, from back when they lived in Wisconsin. Both of them were looking for land after the First World War, and that is what brought them up this way. Ross Caswell was around Whitewater, Montana first before coming up to Canada. In 1921, Ross and Tom ended up trading farms sight unseen, and that's how we ended up here. Ross met Donis, Grandpa Ron's mom, in a store she worked at around Whitewater, Montana. She came from a large family of girls, and she was likely very eager to get out of there. She came up to this homestead right after they were married. In the beginning years, there really were many hardships, and we have no idea what they had to go through to get this farm started here. They had extremely cold winters and cold houses that were heated with coal. They didn't have any water, so they had to bring snow in the house and put it in a barrel beside the stove to melt it. Bringing the snow in would make the already cold house colder. It wasn't until 1952, when they had moved over to the Peels house, which was in this yard here, that they had water. In the early years, Ross had purchased a thrashing machine. Things were reasonably good in the 20s and did some custom thrashing for people until things worsened around 1929. Early on, the main source of income was likely the cattle. There wasn't really any tillage equipment then. Grandpa said he recalls about 10 to 12 years old, he was doing summer following. Summer following and growing cereal crops became the normal practice for quite some time. Grandpa said he went to a meeting one time, we figured probably in the late 80s or early 90s. After that meeting, that's when he decided we needed to start growing other crops besides wheat. So shortly after that, we started growing lentils. As the farm was transitioning, Grandpa and Uncle Bob eventually formed a partnership for the ease of running the farm as one unit. That partnership lives on today in the name of R&R Farms, for Ron and Robert. When we think of a farm, we often think of the men on that farm, and he would really like to highlight some of the females that help us get here. On this farm, my dad really couldn't have gotten it done without my mother. My mother, Donis, was wonderful help, kind-spirited, and never got too worked up. She was the peacemaker, keeping my dad, me, and my brother Bob from killing each other. My mother came here as a bride at 18 years old to a 2-room shack that had no water. It did eventually turn into a 3-room shack, as she had 4 children. Having children wasn't the easiest back then, either, as Shaunavon and Scottsgard were the closest places for help. And that was a full day's trip to get there. In 1952, we moved over to the Peels house in this yard here, and that had electricity and water. My mom was always having to feed many men and find places for them to stay, because my dad would always start projects and hire plenty of help. My sisters did some jobs on the farm as well, like herding the cattle. I remember Eunice didn't really like that though very much. She had to take the cattle out in the mornings and bring it back at dark. That is what Eunice did. She would take the cattle down to Taylor Coulee because it had water and bring them back at night. I remember she mentioned that she used to sit out there and watch the owls. She was 10 years older than me though, so I don't remember her on the farm very much. Eleanor came here at the age of 18 as well and had to fit into a family that she wasn't used to. She had met my mom previously to moving here and they got along well. My dad loved Eleanor the second he found out that she could go out to the pasture and bring the cows in. She did really fall into doing a lot of the farm work, everything from running the combine to doing cattle work and just about anything else really. When Pam came along, she was also young and had got along with everyone very well. We soon had a grandson here and really was the apple to everyone's eye. Really, all of the grandchildren were special that came along on the farm. They contributed to such a great family group and have brought so much joy. Pam has always pitched in so well in feeding anyone that has been around the farm and helping look after the business end of farming. At harvest time, she fed the harvest operators, and we would always wonder how she could always top what she'd fed us the night before. In mine and Darren's generation, we have really gotten along quite well and were able to grow a successful farm. Now that Mark and Katie have joined the farm group, they also fit in very well and do whatever work that needs to be done to continue on this farm. I've really enjoyed going over some of this farm history with Grandpa and hearing new stories that I haven't heard before and documenting some of these stories. Having 87 out of 100 years of a story firsthand, I think is something pretty special.
My great-grandpa was an American. His homestead was in Whitewater, Montana. He was originally from Wisconsin, but then he settled. But he knew this Tom Hugh somehow because he was from the same area. So they decided to trade homestead sight unseen from Whitewater to just over here. And so they just walked and swapped. And, this is a bit of middle of nowhere, but it's, for the most part, it's pretty nice. And I just thank God we never settled in Whitewater, Montana. I mean, if that's where you were, that's where you were. But I'm like, oh man, I'd way rather be here than Whitewater, Montana. And then Grandpa homesteaded here in 1921, which was fairly late, really, for most homesteads in Western Canada. The original place was just northwest of here. They lived through the 30s, which I guess was a really tough time, and they would leave here and they went to Manitoba, they went to Alberta, like Peace Country, they went to Rolling Hills when everybody was leaving here in the 30s when the irrigation project was starting in Rolling Hills. None of that stuff ever worked out, so they ended up back here, and great-grandpa never really looked anywhere else. He thought this was as good a place as any. So what took place really after that, grandpa was born, I guess, in 34. He was the youngest. There was 4. There was my Auntie Eileen, there was Auntie Eunice, that was oldest, second oldest, then my Uncle Bob, and then grandpa. And Uncle Bob was 8 years older, so he started farming first, and then they started farming together. I don't know what year, but that's where R&R Farm stands for Ronald and Robert Farms. They farmed together for 50 years, and Uncle Bob passed away in 2009. And he was a bachelor, didn't have any kids or anything. A family by the name of Peel owned this yard, and they moved from the original place to here because of water. There's a lot of nice groundwater that's only, if you drilled right in this spot here, you probably hit water at 20 feet. So Dad was born, he was an only child, and farmed with Grandpa and Uncle Bob, and then I came along, and that's pretty much a summary of how it carried on.
Ron's dad, he looked a lot at different places for land in a time like in the 40s even, and they were up to Meadow Lake and they went to Alberta, but he never found anything any better, I guess, is why he stayed here, and we're thankful for that. He looked at the irrigation in Alberta when they were setting that up around Rolling Hills, and then of course there was lots of people leaving here, so he had a chance to buy land reasonably cheap. Some of it he got for as little as $1 an acre, so, which is maybe unfortunate because someone else's loss was his gain, but he stuck it out here and worked hard to do it, and he had a thrashing crew, and of course Ron's mom, cooked for all those thrashers and all the hired men that he would pick up guys off the street and bring them home for hired men sometimes, and she would cook for all those people. I guess she was just a little kinder hearted than I would be. But I cooked for hired men somewhat too, but nothing like she did. And our older generations worked a lot harder than we have had to, and that's just part of the evolution, I guess.
Basically, necessity drove all the changes. You didn't know it, but it was necessity. You had to keep growing in the 80s and 90s, because if you didn't grow and move forward, if you sat still, you just kind of disappeared. My grandfather come in 21, so he had a half section, and it grew. Every time somebody bailed on the country and left, they just absorbed a little more, and that never really ended. I shouldn't say it never ended. It's kind of not buying a lot now, but it's got all the work we can stand. The opportunities aren't presenting themselves as fast as they were in the post-World War II era, let's put it that way. And a lot more individuals leaving all the time, and nobody wanted to live up here. Too far. Yeah, we basically lived where nobody wanted to live. That presented a lot of opportunities. Yeah, you just pick the worst place to live, and then that's where you go, and you'll have opportunities.
When people settled this area, you worked to survive, and you had to work hard, and your back gave out because of it, right? But everything, all that was done way before I came along, and before Dad's time too. It's just it shows you like the perseverance of the generations before. If you had to work 12 hours a day in 40-degree heat picking square bales, you just did it because that's what you had to do to survive, right? Huge appreciation for that. My dad's and mine, and possibly the next, right? And it's a whole different game now. Like, we've shifted from physical labor, now it's a large business model, right? Where you're watching numbers, you got to stay on top of stuff because you can be on the backside of a you could have a big loss and before you know it. So it's changed. The mental stress is still there. I think that's probably not gonna get better, if not get worse, but gotta manage that. And it's very fortunate that all that stuff is over with and we can continue on doing what we're doing and living a good life. So work smarter, not harder. That's the millennial way. To come out to this farm out here, it's one of the big conversation pieces and a big attraction for people to come out here. It's like, if you come out here, you're gonna come see the tractors, right? No matter if you're into that or not, it's just kind of a spectacle to see, big building with rows of old tractors, right? Whether you know what they are or you don't.
It also just evolved. I didn't have any master plan there when I went to an auction sale on the tractor there that didn't bring very much money, and I bought it, and short time I needed another one to match it, so that was what I needed. And it just evolved from that. I had a WD9, and then I needed a W6 and a W4. I got colorblind after that, I guess. So I just kept on going. It got where colors didn't make any difference. I just bought all kinds of colors and distracting. I don't know, but I expect there's around 80 or so.
Well, most of our so-called holidays were a trip with a truck and trailer to pick up an old tractor someplace. We've picked up tractors from Vancouver to Steinbach, Manitoba, and Minnesota, and all over, and most of those were what our holiday for the year was. So we've got some local tractors too that are fun to say. A tractor that Gordon Wright used to go to town on, and it's fun to have local people you can talk about and have their old tractor. So, and Ron really enjoyed doing it when his body would let him do it. That was his fun, I guess.
I think it's fantastic. But when I came on the scene in 1989, they had them in like a couple little sheds here and there and whatnot, and they had all the tractors they wanted. And they built a small little shed originally and put the tractors in that they had all they wanted, and then pretty soon they're doubling the size, and they had all they wanted. And I don't know if Darren and Mark will carry it on, but it's really cool, and I love the reaction of people when you say you have a tractor collection, and they come in here and they can't even imagine that it's this large and stuff. And we had friends of Haley's from Australia here, and they had just been to Calgary Stampede, and they saw all the antique tractors and stuff, and they had been talking about them before we got here, right? And they were saying how cool they were, and all that kind of stuff, and showing us pictures. And then they walked in here, and their eyes just kind of went, and they were like, "You let us talk about the other ones, and you have this." Ron took pride in every single one that he did, and I even got to paint a few of the hand decals and stuff on a couple of them. So yeah, it's a cool thing. It's a cool legacy for the kids to have, and it'll be cool for them to tell their kids and stuff. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I had a hand in restoring a few of them and went on a few trips to pick some up, and so I was around for some of this, and the buildings going up and everything getting lined up. And when me and Haley were kids, we used to drive lots of them, and it was a lot of fun. And lately, we used to try to restore one a year, like do one up nicely, and we haven't been able to do that in a long time. We just kind of got busy, but we're gonna try to get back into that again and start fixing one a year, at least one, or maybe one every other year. It's just a neat hobby, right? You're collecting a pretty large, it's a big collection of big things. Like they're tractors, they're not toys. Or Grandpa and Dad too, but Grandpa mostly, like, he traveled all over Western Canada picking these up, so there's a lot of trips and memories with that too, right? And a lot of them came out of a few of them came out of the States, and he had a good friend down there in Minnesota that dealt tractors, and there was many trips back and forth there, and it was always a big trip to go down there and pick something up. And they did a lot of trading back and forth. He'd take Canadian tractors, he'd bring back American tractors. So there's a lot of memories made on the road and a lot of memories made in the shop. I never did any big restorations like I did where you're tearing it right down. And a couple old Caterpillars that Dad and Grandpa had tore right down. They were all seized up, and they had to make parts and find parts. And I haven't been involved in anything that substantial, but had a hand in a few of the other ones that some days I hated it. You sand to get it ready for paint, and it's like I just want to paint the damn thing. I don't want to just sand all day. So no, it's an amazing collection, and and as I've got older, I've really appreciated it more and more, and it's not going to go anywhere in my time. So it'll be up to my kids what they want to do with it. So if the right deal came along, I still would add to this. Like I said, I'd like to get back on track to restoring one a year fully. All these tractors run, or they did run, and they wouldn't take much to get going again. But I would like to get back into that where we're, take one, paint it, or tear it down, paint it, give it one a year a facelift. But it gets harder, as when you get older, there's a lot more going on. We're doing lots of other main farm stuff. It's hard to make time, but if you just make time, you can get it done. But no, it's not for me. I still am interested, and like I said, if the right deal came along, I still would add to this. So basically, this collection, like my Grandpa wasn't much of a holiday guy, but he would make a holiday to go look for a tractor, and they didn't just go, to Saskatoon or Regina. They'd go to Vancouver or Prince George, like up in the interior of BC and stuff. So there was lots of miles made.
I think how it all started was my mom told my dad he needed a hobby. Probably so he wasn't bothering her. And so he just started buying the odd one. And I'd like to get I'd like to have all the ones that were in that like, say, Farm All Cub. Or we had an A. It'd be nice to have a Cub. We don't have a B, so we better have a B, and then a C, and an H, and an M. It just kind of started from there, growing those little lines of sequential numbers and letters. Yeah, and then this is what it turns into. Then it got to be where you can't, I wouldn't say you can't stop, but it just, now we got to have the John Deeres that were the equivalent. And then, I like Minneapolis, so I better have them. Then somebody phones you and says, I got some cats for sale. Do you want that? Absolutely. And then, this is how it turned. That's basically how it happens. And then unique things like that self-propelled baler. Better grab one of them. There wasn't many of them around. I don't know how you describe it. It kind of gets to be a bit of a mania. Yeah, and then we used to try to restore one, if not two, every winter. And I don't know, we seem to run out of time. We don't have time to do that. Maybe so we don't take time. That's maybe more of an issue than actually not having time. No, it's been good. We used to just sit out here and relax, sit amongst the tractors. Some people like sit in the trees. We like sit in the tractors. I could probably tell you most of the stories that come and where it's getting. I haven't told them all, but my dad knew all the stories of every tractor. And of course, I heard heard them over and over and over every time. So I can tell you where probably 90% of these come from, and who owned them, and where he got them, and who some of the characters were that actually owned them. Like this little guy right behind me here probably is the most memorable of all stories. It was an old guy at Bracken, had him, and that was his going to town tractor. He never actually farmed with it, he just drove it to town. He had a wagon, he pulled behind it, never in road gear, always about 5 mile an hour. You'd see him on the road. Never a driver's license, so he just drove his tractor all the time, and we went and bought it from him, and Dad's got a picture of Gordon standing beside it. I thought that was pretty cool. That was all it was ever used for, was his going to town tractor. So I'm real partial to that RD6 Caterpillar way down there, that big one. That was a tough one to get where it worked good, and then once we got it, it just works like a fantastic. It works really well. So that's one of my favorites. I enjoyed them all. But that RD6, that is truly my favorite one in here. I mean, everybody likes those 80-20s because it's green and they're really rare, so there's not many of them, and they're appreciate like a blue chip stock. But no, that is one of my favorites too. It was more luck than good management that we wound up with. I would have to say that Caterpillar. I would stand on the pulpit and declare that. Yeah, but
Just want you to speak about life on the farm and what it's taught you.
how to get out of bed every morning. Because if you ain't out there making it happen, it's not going to happen. You know, it took me a long time to figure that out, because my dad, he was we go to work at 7 in the morning every day, and that's what we did. And so that was a pretty big lesson, I would say. Didn't realize I was getting a lesson at the time until I went to work in Australia, and then once I went and worked for somebody else for a while, I come home with a whole new way of thinking. Yeah, getting out of bed and just get up and go to work and get your stuff done every day. That's execute your plan. Have a plan is probably the most important thing. I don't know if getting out of bed in the morning and having a plan, I don't know if you can roll that all together or what, but that would be the most important life lesson, I guess. Doesn't matter how hard you work, just go at it every day. Try not to get stressed out, but it happens. You know, I learned, I was probably 40 years old when I did learn this, was I have to stop worrying about things I cannot change. Because everyone does it. You're worried about stuff you have no control over. As soon as I stopped doing that, life was better. You just frees up a lot of your brain to focus on the things that you're supposed to be doing. Whatever happens, happens. But I think you gotta have gray hair to get to that point where you're just, whatever happens, there's nothing to do about it. The sun will rise tomorrow, although some people will try to tell you it's not.
Everything about farm life is certainly taught you patience, how to do things honestly. Farm life is the only life I know, so I have a hard time commenting on any other life. But
Oh, that's a good question. I guess taught us to appreciate nature and the good rains when we get them, and the snow in the winter. I've always kind of liked winter. Fall and winter, I guess, the fall season is always a beautiful time of year. Really, most years we have really nice falls. And of course, I like to ski and I like to skate, and that's all part of winter, and so I didn't ever dislike winter. Maybe getting more so now that I dislike winter than I did, but I loved it on the farm as a young person, so. You're your own boss, you work hard, and you can't have a better life than living on a farm, so.
That is a part of farming that that in itself is very funny, because I've always struggled with like contentment in where I am, and I found I didn't know what it was until like I moved out here, and then I started finding skills that I didn't know I had, like cooking and stuff like that, and That's one thing that farming has done for me.
It's taught, well, basically it's shaped who I am as a person 100%. It's taught me, number one, work ethic. That's, I mean, number one thing. It's taught me humility. You gotta, we were talking about what's your worst mistake you've made. You make every day, there's mistakes made. I've learned pretty quick, if you don't own up to it, you're in way deeper shit than if you don't. So you learn those things pretty quick, and you learn to work with a team. You learn to work with other people, because we've always had hired help, and good hired help too, but you still gotta learn to be a leader and learn to work with people and not come across as demanding and unappreciative. And it's taught me about how to be resourceful, like if your vehicle dies on the side of the road, you're not completely paralyzed, or stuff like that. Yeah, it's taught me to be appreciative of everything that you have, because everything we do have here we've built or maintain the resources to get built. So whether it be water exploration or backup power, like living way out here, you gotta be pretty independent, because people aren't, like, nobody's coming out here right away, right? If you have a problem. So you gotta learn how to think on your feet and be ready to tackle any challenge that comes your way. A lot of little things all the freedoms you have, the opportunities that you have, and you can learn how to drive when you're young, and everybody's careful, and in the city it's tougher to do. And even living in a small town, everything's close knit, it's safer, it's nice, and it's just a wonderful way of life. So my name is Marcus Caswell, and I'm a fourth generation farmer. My role it's evolved over the years, but I'd say I'm specialized in the agronomy side of things and the main sprayer guy, but I'm a jack of all trades, master of none around here, so. Yeah.
My name is Katie Caswell. I am the wife of Marcus Caswell, and don't really know what my role is yet. Like, I'm kind of an unconventional farm wife. I work outside of the farm.
Well, I'm Eleanor Caswell. I'm Ron's wife and Darren's mother and Mark's grandmother, and I have, worked alongside of all of them, so it's been a big part of my life for sure.
My name is Pam Caswell. I am currently the bookkeeper, farm manager. I've had to grow into that role because you can't do that. When you're raising 4 kids, you have to they need to be your priority. And I love my role now. Yeah, I like the business aspect of it. It's just a good life. They're good people. I think we're good people. I would have liked to have met Darren's grandparents, because they sound like they're pretty cool people, just to complete the legacy a little bit more. But coming in with Ron and Eleanor, it's really cool, and you can see the pride that they take in the place, and have passed on to Darren, and now on to Mark, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I'm Ron Caswell, and I'm the grandfather of the next generation that's taking over, and I'm very proud to be that.
I guess maybe most proud of our grandchildren. And how they've all grown up and done well, and yeah, just how everything has grown and still is very viable. Like, sometimes farms have not gone more than 3 generations, so.
I'm very proud of all of them. I'm very proud of Mark and who he's become and who he continues to be. So I'm very proud of like his entire family, but like my inspiration of all that like really goes towards Mark, because he is such a progressive thinker, and he is always trying to find ways to better himself and to be like a better worker or a better family man, or just trying to find new and innovative ways to like expand the farm. And like he's just trying to always do things better. Like that makes me feel very proud. And obviously being in a family so incredibly accepting and loving, and all of us having a pretty good relationship with one another.
Yeah, my name's Darren Caswell, and I'm the third generation here. My grandfather come with nothing, and I am very fortunate to live in the time that I do, where I have basically everything I need. You know, somebody else paid the tough prices before I got here. So pretty fortunate to live and grow up in this environment. I don't know if most people realize how fortunate we are to grow up in this little block of time. I don't know what it's like going forward, but when my grandfather got here, it was like settling Siberia. And man, I really enjoy it when the heat turns on and the house stays the same. I mean, they had nothing close to that. And so, like I said, the tough prices were all paid before I got here. So pretty fortunate. My grandfather moved here basically because this was the last free land in North America. You know, it turned in what we thought maybe, or what my grandfather thought was maybe not the best place in the world, because he did run around looking for a better spot. He never found it. I would say it turned out to be the best place. We're here. There was no point in looking anymore. So, you know, it's been a big privilege, I guess, that my kids actually want to keep doing this with us. So that's pretty nice. That Marcus and Kate want to live here and do the whole thing and put up with me till the end. If Marcus and Kate weren't here, I mean, I probably wouldn't be winding down by now. You know, his dad's pretty much is retired, and if I was doing it by myself, it wouldn't be near as much fun as it is with when you have the next gen coming up from the bottom. So, which makes it all worthwhile in the end. I guess I'm very proud of what we've accomplished. My dad basically and his brother, Bob, took over from his dad. You know, it got to one point, and then they are the ones that really, you know, they really carried it to the next level. Very proud of that fact. If you're going up 10 steps, it's pretty nice if you get to start in on step number 5. Like me, it's good. And then when Marcus was out of school and come along, well, that even made it better. Pretty proud of the fact that, like I said, that they decided that this was something they wanted to do, or that Marcus wanted to do. You know, a vocation that your kids want to follow along and do what your dad did and your grandfather did and your great-grandfather did. Yeah, it's a big deal. Lots of people don't get to do that, so most probably don't get to do that. You know, that don't get to watch it carry on after. So usually, you know, a lot of times you live out your working life, and your kids live out their dreams doing something else, and when that's working time's over, you go home and plant flowers and wax your car. Talk about what you used to do.
It took a while for me to feel proud, because it was hard to follow up with the success of my grandpa and my dad. I feel like I found my way, and it's tremendous amount of pride that I feel that, you know, I continue on a place that's been here for 100 years and would hope to continue it for as long as I can. And hopefully if I do have kids, or when I have kids, they're interested and we can continue on. But if they don't want to farm, I guess I can't make them. But it's just really, it's pretty special to be involved with an operation has been in your family for this long, and you're living in a yard and you're getting along, and everybody goes to work every day and everybody's pulling in the same direction, and every day is not a challenge. It's just a wonderful feeling to get up and be like, oh, I just want to go to work and I can't wait to see what the day brings and what the year is going to bring. And yeah, it's a really wonderful feeling being a part of a place as established as this. And it just takes work, and it takes dedication, and it takes teamwork to keep a place going, and hope that I can just continue and be successful like the generations past.
In every single moment, slow down and listen for a heartbeat. With everything in motion, here now, see the beauty that is woven in every single moment.
One thing I did not see coming was 25 years ago, I never thought I would be sitting around having a serious conversation and Kelby Coburn would be part of it. Did not see that coming. No, when you're in grade 1, 2. Yeah, totally. Wow.